What happens? A back Hollywood adeptness meets aristocratic altercation, alive on television. Today, we're diving into one of the best atomic moments in daytime TV history. Angelina Jolie delivered a masterclass in adroitness beneath burden, while actually dismantling Meghan Markle's anxiously crafted narrative. The restriction was so blubbery you could cut it with a knife. And by the end, one bedfellow was larboard aghast, while the added acceptable, a continuing ovation. Accomplish, abiding to subscribe, and be to animate version beneath, because this adventure will leave you analytic, aggregate you apprehension you knew about celebrity interviews. The actualization flat-bashed with apprehension as the show's iconic affair music faded. Whoopi Goldberg sat centermost, date belted by Joy Behar, Sarah Haynes, Alyssa Farah Griffin, and Sunony host. The activity was altered today. Electric about as if anybody could. Faculty article big was about to unfold. Ladies and gentlemen, Whoopi began her articulation, accustomed authority. We accept to absolute appropriate guests abutting us today. First, amuse acceptable actress, director, and altruistic Angelina Jolie. The admirers erupted as Angelina absolved dissimulate. The stage, her attendance advantageous absolute respect, she confused with that effortless breeding that had captivated audiences for decades. Balmy after effects to the army of for demography her bench on the acclaimed couch. And our added guest, Whoopi continued. The Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle. Meghan emerged from backstage, her smile ablaze but somehow calculated. She'd acutely able for this moment, her accoutrements altogether chosen, her beard immaculately styled, but there was article in her eyes, a ache perhaps, that appropriate she had in calendar above simple promotion. As both women into their seats, the adverse was anon apparent. Angelina sat naturally, actually present in the moment, while Meghan seemed to be assuming alike in stillness. Her aspect perfect, her easily positioned aloof, so admirable to accept you both here. Joy Behar jumped in, her brand activity on abounding display. Angelina, your actuality announcement, your new blur about refugee advocacy. And Meghan, you're discussing your accessible Netflix documentary series. Two absolute altered projects, but both absorption on important amusing issues. Angelina nodded graciously. Acknowledge you for accepting me. Yes, this blur's article, absolute. Abutting to my heart, I've spent years alive with refugees about the world, and I capito to actualize article that would accord articulation to their stories, their resilience. That's beautiful, Sarah Haynes interjected. Your assignment with the UN has been so impactful over the years. I've been advantaged to attest an absurd backbone in the best arduous circumstances, Angelina replied. These are bodies who've absent everything but debris to lose hope. They've accomplished me added about adventuresomeness than any role I've any time played. Meghan, who had been cat and mouse for her moment, leaned advanced slightly. I actually accept that affection for altruistic work. My own adventure has opened my eyes to so abounding injustices, decidedly about brainy bloom and women's empowerment. Sometimes I anticipate bodies don't apprehend how isolating it can be a backkit. You're aggravating to use your Belvedere for change, but adverse connected criticism. There it was. Alike in what should accept been Angelina's moment, Meghan had somehow redirected the chat to her own struggles. The console exchanged quick glances, and admirers at home could about feel the about-face and energy. Sunany host, anytime the accomplished interviewer, approved to cross diplomatically, both of your platforms except actually brought absorption to important causes. Meghan, acquaint us about your Netflix series. Well, Meghan began clearing a back, with arresting satisfaction. It's actually about actuality and breaking chargeless from systems that try to black out you. I anticipate so abounding women, abnormally women of color, can chronicle too activity trapped by institutions that smile at you about but attenuate you privately. The account afraid in the air. Anybody knew actually what academy she was referencing, and the association was clear. This wasn't aloof promotion, this was a afflicted attack. Alyssa Farah Griffin, cartoon on her political background, accustomed the moment for what it was. That's actually a able theme. Angelina, in your altruistic work, except you encountered agnate institutional challenges. Angelina's acknowledgement was measured, thoughtful. I've abstrused at absolute change. Happens aback, you focus on the assignment itself, rather than the obstacles. Aback, you're actually committed to a cause. You acquisition means to serve behindhand. Of the circumstances, the bodies I assignment with, refugees who fled war zones, they don't accept the affluence of institutional support. They actualize their own networks of resilience. It was a attenuate but a secular response. After Anon joined Meghan, Angelina had accent the aberration amid 18-carat account and egoistic narratives. Meghan's smile anchored about imperceptibly. Of course, but I anticipate it's important to exceed that some of us accept had to activity battles on assorted fronts. Aback you're consistently accepting your actualization assassinated in the columnist while aggravating to do acceptable work. It takes a toll. Actualization, assassination, is a able term, Joy Behar noted. Her announcer instincts blame in, "Are you apropos to specific incidents?" "I'm apropos to a pattern," Meghan replied. Her articulation demography on that confidence accent, she acclimated. In austere interviews, a arrangement of analytical abrasive that goes above accustomed media scrutiny. A back you're aggravating to improve age-old institutions while additionally angry ancestral bias. The advance a back can be overwhelming. The admirers was actually bashful now, blind on every word. This was acutely architecture, to article, bigger, whoopee, analysis, the tension, approved to beacon things aback on track. Let's allocution about your accepted projects. Angelina, your blur premieres a budding month, correct? Yes, and I'm acquisitive it will animate bodies to abutment refugee resettlement programs in their own communities. Angelina answered, real change happens at the grassroots of Kinneback, accustomed bodies adjudged to get involved. Again, there was that attenuate accent on activity over complaint, account over self-protection. Meghan was alpha to attending beneath comfortable acumen that her accepted anecdotal techniques weren't landing the way they about did. Meghan, confused in her seat, acutely balked that her attempts to center most the chat about her own victimhood weren't accepting the accords she expected. The actualization console was accomplished abundant to admit a bedfellow was blaming agenda, and Angelina's attendance seemed to highlight aloof how afflicted Meghan's admission actually was. You apperceive what? Meghan said, her articulation demography on a bluff edge. I anticipate it's accessible for some bodies to allocution about grassroots change, a back they haven't had to accord with the affectionate of institutional racism and analytical silencing that I've faced. Not anybody has had the advantage of. Actuality, universally admired by the media. The animadversion was acutely directed at Angelina, and the flat fell actually silent. This was a barren area for the view. An absolute battle amid two high-profile guests. Angelina's announcement charcoal serene, but there was animate in her eyes now. I'm sorry. Are you suggesting that my altruistic assignment has been accessible because of media treatment? I'm suggesting that some of us accept had to activity. Harder for our choir to be heard, Meghan replied, acceleration down. I back your ambidextrous with Alcazar sources conference to join you. Tabloids agree your every word. An ancestors associates abnegation to avert you. It's a altered affectionate of challenge. Sarah Haynes looked actually afflictive now. Meghan, those are some austere allegations about your time in the aristocratic family. They're not allegations, they're facts, Meghan declared firmly. And I anticipate it's important that bodies accept the aberration amid addition who gets to accept their altruistic causes, a joint addition, who was silenced back aggravating to allege up about brainy health, about racism, about basal animal dignity. The allegation was clear. Meghan was implying that Angelina's decades of altruistic assignment were somehow beneath elusive because she hadn't faced the aforementioned claimed struggles. Whoopi Goldberg, who had chastened endless acrimonious discussions, could see this. Was ambiguous above accustomed account territory. Ladies, let's booty a footfall aback here. But Angelina captivated up a affable hand. No, it's all right, Whoopi. I anticipate this is an important conversation. She angry to face Meghan directly, her articulation calm but firm. I've spent 20 years alive in refugee camps, war zones, and areas afflicted by accustomed disasters. I've captivated in my arms. I've sat with mothers who've watched their families broken afar by violence. I've been threatened. I've been criticized. I've been alleged aggregate from a home almanac to a publicity seeker. The flat was asleep bashful now. Alike, the camera better seemed too angular but never once, Angelina continued. Except I fabricated my claimed struggles the centermost of the adventure aback, discussing the affliction of others. The refugees I assignment with, they don't accept Netflix deals to acquaint their stories. They don't accept media platforms or aristocratic titles or the adeptness to sit on television and appeal sympathy. They accept annihilation, but their animation and their achievement, that addition will advise them clean their. Your assignment wasn't important. I'm artlessly pointing out that altered bodies face altered obstacles and some of us except had two affected added barriers. Added barriers. Angelina afresh slowly. You beggarly. Like the barrier of actuality built into a war zone. The barrier of watching your apple bake down. The barrier of walking hundreds of afar, with baby accouchement to adeptness a refugee-affected area, you might, if you're lucky, get one meal a day. Joy Behar, who rarely begin herself speechless, was watching this barter with accessible fascination. This wasn't aloof, a disagreement. This was a masterclass in perspective. That's not what I meant, Meghan said, her articulation acceptable defensive. Obviously, those situations are tragic. But I'm talking about institutional racism, oral, able, families, about actuality, gaslit, and isolated. You were isolated, Angelina said, her accent absolute, appreciably calm, in an Alcazar with the agents of hundreds with admission to the best bloom care, education, and assets in the apple with a belvedere that alcove millions of bodies globally. Sunny host approved to intervene. I anticipate what Meghan is aggravating too accurate is that alike with privilege. There can be altered challenges accompanying to chase and ancestors dynamics. Of course, there can be, Angelina agreed immediately, and those challenges are absolute and they matter. But Abak, you're sitting on civic television talking about altruistic work. Maybe the focus should be on the bodies who actually charge advice rather than on how adamantine it's been for you to advise them. The animate version landed like a thunderbolt. Meghan's aperture opened slightly, as if she couldn't actually accept what she aloof heard. I can't accept you aloof, said that. Meghan assuredly managed. You accept no abstraction what I've been through. You accept no abstraction what it's like to accept an absolute academy about face join you. To accept your own ancestors, participate in apply campaigns, to be apprenticed to thoughts of suicide because of the pressure. You're actually right, Angelina replied after missing a beat. I don't apperceive what that's like, but I do apperceive what it's like to appointment a refugee affected. Area mothers are so angular, they can't aftermath milk for their babies. I apperceive what it's like to accommodated boyish girls who've been awash into trafficking. I apperceive what it's like to assignment with survivors of genocide who still death watch up agreeable every night. The allegory was adverse in its simplicity. Alyssa Farah Griffin, cartoon on her years in politics, accustomed to defining moment Abak, she saw one. Angelina, how do you advance focus on the assignment Abak ambidextrous with claimed challenges? You bethink, why you started, Angelina answered. Her boring still anchored on Meghan. You bethink that your claimed pain, no amount how real, doesn't analyze to the affliction of bodies who accept no voice, no platform, no resources. You use whatever advantage you have, whatever belvedere you've been accustomed to serve others rather than to serve yourself. Meghan's face was ablaze now, her anxiously complete accord actually shattered. So, your adage that my affliction doesn't matter, that speaking out about racism and brainy bloom struggles is selfish. I'm adage that Abak you're discussing altruistic work, the focus should be on the bodies you're aggravating to help, not on how adamantine it's been for you to advise them, Angelina replied evenly. I'm adage that absolute account requires putting added people's needs afore your own narrative. The admirers was actually captivated. This wasn't aloof drama. This was a abstruse aberration in worldview actuality played out in absolute time. Whoopi approved already added to accomplish control. Ladies, I anticipate we're all amorous about important causes here. But Meghan wasn't finished. I anticipate it's abundantly advantaged to advance that addition shouldn't allege about their own struggles Abak, those struggles are anon accompanying to their adeptness to advise others. My adventure affairs because it shows added women, abnormally, women of color, that they don't accept to break bashful in the face of injustice. Your adventure actually matters, Angelina agreed, hasty everyone, but so do the belief of the bodies, you affirmation to be helping, and appropriate now in this chat about altruistic work. We've spent 15 account talking about your claimed grievances and about 2 account talking about the absolute bodies who charge help. The ascertainment hit like a call-together aimed arrow. Meghan sat there, aperture hardly agape, as the accuracy of Angelina's words acclimatized over the flat like abundant blanket. Alike, the acclimatized actualization console seemed abashed by the attention of the critique. That's not fair, Meghan assuredly stammered, her articulation defective, it's accepted, assured cadence. You're aggravating to accomplish it, assume like, I don't affliction about the bodies, I'm aggravating to help. Am I? Angelina asked quietly, because in the 20 account we've been sitting here, you've mentioned your own struggles about 15 times, and the bodies your documentary is declared to advice actually twice. Already in casual and already to explain how their belief chronicled to your own experience. Sarah Haynes looked bottomward at her notes, acutely fact-checking Angelina's ascertainment in absolute time. Her slight nod appropriate the calculation. Was accurate, I anticipate ambience matters, Meghan said, her articulation assent slightly. Bodhi's charged to accept the obstacles I faced and adjustment to acknowledge the assignment I'm accomplishing now. Do they? Angelina countered, aptitude? Advanced slightly, Abak, I accomplish a blur about refugees. Do I absorb the majority of the account talking about how difficult it was for me to get financing? Do I altercate how backbreaking the biking was or how the media criticized my motives? Or do I about the absurd bodies I met and the burning charge for support? The consul exchanged glances. They all knew the answer. In endless interviews over the years, Angelina had consistently centered the bodies she was aggravating to advice, rather than her own journey. That's different, Meghan insisted, but her altercation was accident steam. You don't accept the altered pressures of actuality in the aristocratic family. You're actually right. I don't, Angelina agreed readily. But you apperceive what? I do accept, The burden of actuality, a distinct mother, aggravating to assure your accouchement while alive in alarming locations. The burden of actuality consistently scrutinized for every relationship, every adoption, every parenting best I've any time made. The burden of accepting my brainy bloom questioned, my motives analyzed, my absolute activity dissected in the tabloids. For over 2 decades, the flat was actually bashful now. Alike Whoopi seemed afraid to interrupt, but here's the difference, Angelina continued, her articulation abiding and clear. I abstrused aboriginal on that my claimed struggles, no amount, how absolute or how painful, are not the story. Aback, I'm advocating for bodies who are actually angry for survival. The adventure is them, always them. Meghan's face was now visibly flushed, her accord actually abandoned. So, you anticipate I should aloof, break bashful about institutional racism, about the brainy bloom crisis I experienced. I think, Angelina said, pausing deliberately, that there's a time and abode for claimed testimony, and there's a time and abode for affectionate advocacy, and I anticipate accurate advocates apperceive the difference. Joy Behar, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, assuredly batten up. Angelina, that's an appealing, able statement. Are you adage that claimed acquaintance can acquaint advancement work? Not at all, Angelina replied immediately. Claimed acquaintance actually should acquaint advocacy. But the catechism is whether your application, your acquaintance to serve others, or whether your application others' affliction to serve your own narrative. The animadversion was adverse in its clarity. Meghan looked as if she'd been physically struck. I can't accept this, Meghan said, her articulation afraid now. I came actuality to allocution about important amusing issues, and instead, I'm actuality. Attacked for administration, my own adventure of advantageous adversity. No one's advancing you, Sunany host, said gently, aggravating to broadcast the situation. I anticipate this is aloof, an absolute amorous altercation about altered approaches to advocacy. But Angelina wasn't finished. Meghan, can you acquaint us appropriate now, after advertence, your own acquaintance why bodies should affliction about your Netflix documentary? What specific issues does it address? And how does it advise the communities you're claiming to serve? The catechism, afraid in the air, like a challenge. Meghan opened her mouth, afresh bankrupted, afresh opened it again. It's about allotment women to allege their accuracy in the face of institutional oppression. She assuredly managed. Which institutions? Angelina pressed. What specific forms of oppression? What communities are actuality helped? What assets are actuality provided? What accessible outcomes are you acquisitive to achieve? With anniversary question, Meghan seemed to compress added into her seat. It was acceptable, acutely accessible, that her activity was added about her own adventure, then about allowance, others. I don't anticipate I should accept to avert my altruistic efforts to addition who's aggravating to abbreviate my experiences. Meghan said, her articulation demography on a bad-tempered accent that was actually at allowance with her accepted able presentation. I'm not aspersing your experiences, Angelina replied calmly. I'm allurement you to analyze amid administration, your adventures to advise others and administration. Added struggles to validate your own experiences. The acumen was so clear, so altogether articulate, that alike, Meghan seemed to accept she'd been actually outmaneuvered. Alyssa Farah Griffin, acquainted a teaching moment, addressed the admirers directly. I anticipate what we're witnessing. Actuality is a actually important chat about the aberration amid advancement in autobiography. Exactly, Angelina said, access to face the camera. Aback we accept platforms. Aback we accept privilege. Aback we accept resources. We accept a choice. We can use those ability to amplify choir that would contrarily go unheard, or we can use added people's struggles to amplify our own voices. Meghan sat in abashed silence, acutely acrimon that aggregate, she'd said, had been angry, adjoined her with surgical precision. Whoopi, analysis that this had accomplished its accustomed conclusion, approved to blank it up. Well, this has actually been in candid altercation about the responsibilities that appear with accessible platform. It has, Angelina agreed, a fresh angry anon to Meghan one final time. And I achievement that your documentary succeeds in allowance. The bodies it's declared to serve because at the end of the day, that's what actually matters. The animadversion was accommodating on the surface, but agitated an apparent challenge. Meghan managed a anemic smile and a almost oral acknowledge you, but it was bright she'd been thoroughly and actually humbled. As the cameras able to cut to commercial, the admirers began to applaud, but they weren't applauding both guests equally. The acclaim was acutely for Angelina, who had delivered a masterclass in adroitness beneath burden, while advertisement the axiological blank of performative activism. Meghan sat there, her altogether planned appearance, accepting backfired spectacularly, while Angelina, accustomed the acclaim with the aforementioned quiet abode she'd maintained throughout the absolute adverse exchange. In Beneath than 30 Minutes, one of Hollywood's best admired abstracts had actually dismantled one of the world's best afflicted promoters, all while never adopting her articulation or abandoning her principles. It was a moment that would be replayed endless times, analyzed endlessly, and remembered as the day accurate account triumphed over bogus victimhood on a live television. So, what did you anticipate of this absurd affectation of adroitness beneath? Pressure. Did Angelina Jolie handle this bearings perfectly, or should she accept been added diplomatic? Feed your thoughts in the comments below, and accomplish abiding to subscribe for added behind-the-scenes belief that acknowledge what actually happens aback the cameras are rolling.